Alright, let's go ahead and lift our confixer day. Now, to be able to lift the confixer, friends, you open a new project, a new module. So, you do it like this. You add it in the form of a confixer. Friends, like I said, you don't need any extra parameters here. You mention these, and inside the confixer, what are we going to do here? Let me just open it up right away. We need an application YAML. I am currently in the process of adding this critical buju.com mohammed.com big server. Break time equals 0.5s/, and it is being integrated. I'm writing application. Here, shipping. Spring food application. Spring application.run config server classic. I'm starting this as well, friends. Now, what do I need? Of course, friends, I need dependencies. What are the dependencies I need to add? First, since this will be a config server, there's a Spring Starter config project for that. So, first, we need to add that. Now, let me write these out like this. Let's add them from the dependencies section. I think it'll be easier if I finish this and swallow it, friends. Now, let me take the cloud project at the top, because the steps we're doing now. On the Spring Cloud side, for a config server, let me write it as Spring Cloud config. The part that changes here is Cloud Spring Cloud Starter config, friends, so this part will be config. You need to adjust that. Then, I'm adding one more. That one will be Spring Cloud config server. So, we'll write it like this as well. So, not Spring Cloud Starter this time. It will be Spring Cloud config tray server. And for these servers, as well as for the clients, that is, for our other microservices, it will be config client. Friends, since we're here, let's also add the config server here. Spring Cloud config client, friends. This will be for our other microservices. Spring Cloud config. I'm adding it like this. We'll be using these, friends. Alright, let me stop my applications for a moment, if that's okay. I'm closing them like this. Now, what are we going to change? We're going to implement the config server. Implementation steps. Please take this from here, otherwise, you might write it and forget, or you might write it incorrectly. First, Spring Cloud config, friends. First, I'm adding this. Implementation, all of them, dot. The other one is Spring Cloud config server, friends. I'm adding this here as well. So, these are the two dependencies we'll be using in our config server, friends. I'm refreshing this. And I'm making sure these dependencies are loaded. Let's close this like so. Nice. Now these have also been added. Now, what are we going to do? We'll configure them. First, you do this. You come here. Yes. Here, the config server needs to be enabled. You write enable config server. That's your first step, friends. First, you take care of this. After that, we'll edit the resources section. Friends, here. We need an application YAML, and second, we need a bootstrap YML. I'll code both of them step by step and tell you exactly what to write where. First of all, friends, the default port, the commonly accepted one, is port 8888. You write the config server like this, but do you absolutely have to write it this way? You don't, friends. Write whatever you want. I mean, you can write 1111 or 5555 there if you want. Here, I'm going to give it an application name. I want to say config server here. Now we're going to make this a config server. So, friends, inside Cloud, we have something called config server. We have a section for it. We'll edit it from there. Let's write it down. What was it again? Can I explain our imports as Spring Cloud config server? That's basically the logic here, right? So, which integration are we going to do here? Look, what integrations are available? See, you can connect to AWS. There's S3 here, AWS is S3, and there's Google Cloud among them. There's GIT. Can you see it? There are a ton of things. There's a database, native, SVN, Azure. Sir, what can actually be done? There are so many options. Guys, here's the logic. You're developing an application, and you can store the application's configuration information in different places. For example, I set up GIT, but you might be fully integrated with Azure. You can use that, or you can upload it to Amazon, to an S3 bucket on Amazon. So just because I explained GIT doesn't mean it can only be added here. Or you can do it like this. Maybe you want it to stay completely within your internal network. You can put it inside the Kubernetes cluster, so you don't necessarily have to expose it externally. That's why this is done entirely based on your needs. Here, I'm explaining GitHub so that you can easily integrate this. That's why I'll be explaining it using GIT. Guys, first, it will ask us for it will ask for an address, and we'll write that here. I'm skipping this for now, and then we'll talk about what the default will be here. I'm skipping that too. We'll discuss what it is. Here, we'll skip SSL like this, write down what it will ask from us, and it will also ask us for a password. Now we'll talk about these. Guys, for integration with the GIT siblings of this configuration, first, you need to have an account on GitHub, and you need to create a repo there. Inside this repo, your application YAML information needs to be added. What do I mean by that? Look, let's open a GitHub account like this now. I'm opening my own GitHub account here. Guys, I'm going to create a new repo here. I'm creating the repo here. I've named it like this. Alright, I'm making this private. Guys, you need to pay very close attention to this. Look, whatever you do, do not make this public. Why? Let me explain. Let's say you're working on something simple. You have an application. Out microservice, user microservice. Where does the user microservice connect to? Here. I'm opening it from here. You're connecting to MongoDB. The username, password, database, all the information for MongoDB is here. What happens if you go and put this in a public place? You make it accessible to everyone. Would you want to expose your project's usernames and passwords to the outside? Guys, think about it like that. All right. That's why this will be a priority. After that, I create the repo. Guys, I haven't done anything yet. This is our first step. Our repo is created. Now I need to add new files into this repo. Look, it says updating here. Let's add it here. We're going to add from existing files here. What are we going to add? Let me do it like this. The one from auto microservice. First of all, resources. This one. Let's open it. You just drag and drop. Guys, I'm bringing this here and dropping it here. You need to give these names. Naming it like this is actually wrong. Guys, instead of naming it application YAML, let me just delete this. Let me show you like this. Now, don't make it application YAML like this. Guys, let me just copy this right here, if you don't mind. Copy. You write it like this. Application, so rename it. Please, these details. Let me close it like this. Application. We'll do the same thing inside the service. So, I copied it like this. Now, when I paste it again, I come here. User application YAML, so don't just make it application YML directly. You'll see it here. I'm adding it here. Out application. Now, let's go to the other one. This is also user application. Yes. I'm committing this, guys. Now look, the things needed for my private config server are here now. Now, from here, you do this. After creating this, guys, you come here. Here, look, you copy this address in the HTTPS section. What are you going to do? You put this in the config server's application YAML. Look, it's right here. You paste it here. This is our first step. So, what's in the second part? The default label section. What is the default label? This is the default label. Guys, in other words, your branches. Which branch are you using? On which branch? As you know, there may be a lot of branches here. What's mine? It was the main branch. Then I'm coming here. I'm writing main. Then it asks me for a username. User. AA is here. Look, Muhammad Ali El-Besli. Okay, I took it. 2. I came and pasted it here. Password. Here we are. This is usually where people get stuck. Here, they come and type the book's password. Guys, would you write your root session here? You shouldn't. Guys, can it be written? So, what are we going to do? Sir, I mean, if you just go ahead and use the login you have here, you don't write the password. Look, now. Here's what you're going to do here. You go to the settings section. Then you scroll all the way down here. There's developer settings. You go here. In developer settings, there are access tokens here. There's a classic token here. You go here. We're going to create a new token here. I'm creating a new token from here. I'm going to create a classic token from here. For this, we need a certain number of days. I select custom. There's a 7-day option. 7 days is enough. Which token is this? Let's call it education. The only thing you need to do here is to allow this. Guys, look, this is it. You don't need anything else. You just allow this here. You don't need the others. We won't use them. Then you click on Generate Token and create the token. Look, the token has been created. You copy this and paste it here. Now, I'm pasting it here, but as I said, mine will be disabled after 7 days. It'll expire. But I want to mention this. Let's say you openly wrote your token information here. Then you took this project and pushed it to GitHub. If GitHub detects a token in your code, if it catches such a token, it immediately cancels the token. Right away, so the moment you commit this, the token gets cancelled. Why? It's a security vulnerability. Guys, it's the same as what I just said. I mean, if you go and, would you write the username and password you used to open a regular book here? When you do this, you're doing the same thing. You're sending the password to the book in an open, public way. Again, it's the same thing. That's why, instead of writing it here, we usually do it like this. Guys, please pay attention to this. Write it the way I did it. Now I'm going to cut and take this parameter from here. Here, I say GITQ. So, what does this mean, guys? This means get my configs from the environment variable in this system. I've written the GIT key needed for the config server here. Where will I get the value for the GIT key? From the environment variable. Look, now I'm right-clicking on the config server. Here, under More Than Debug, there's Modify Configuration. If you're not using Ultimate, you can see it right here. This, Modify Run Configuration. Now here, you click here and select Environment Variable. What did we call it? Look, it's written here. GIT key. You come here. GIT key equals. I paste what I just copied here. This way, I'll make it work. Guys, now we've set this up. So what does this do now? This will go and read the information inside the relevant repo from my GitHub, guys. In other words, it will read the information here. Alright, let's move on. So, what else are we going to do now? We had our bootstrap. We also need to define the bootstrap. Here, Spring application. I'm saying, what am I? Let me take this. Mode. Here, I'm continuing actively in the profile section as dev, and with this, I've completed the necessary configurations for the config server. Now I'm going to start it up and check, guys, meaning I'll see if it's working correctly or not. Look, where did it start? On 8,888. So, how do we check? http://localhost 8888. For example, what was it here? Out, right? Out application. Look, now it needs to connect to GIT and fetch information here. If this doesn't come up, I mean if you're experiencing a problem like this, it means something is wrong. Let's go and see right away what's wrong. We've gotten an authorization error. Here, our password or username, something is wrong with one of them. Now, guys, we have a small problem. We need to pay attention to that. Here, I had given you something to fix it. I had said, here, write modifier and configuration. When you're writing here, Don't include the GIT key in quotation marks. Double quotation marks. Writing with double quotes detects those, causing problems. So write it without double quotation marks. I mean, here you can use double quotation marks. That's fine. But when you take it from here, you do it without using double quotation marks. Alright, now let's move on. Did the information come through? It did. Teacher, you came from there. How do you know? Try it like this. Friends, now look. What are we reading? Auto, right? Look, edit this from here. How much is it? Is it 90? Let's send it to 99, for example. I'm saying commit change. I'm saying commit 90 to 99. Now look, how much is it here? 90 to 99. I'm saying refresh. Did 90 to 99 come through? Yes, as you can see. Now, where will all the information come from? Of course, it will come from our GIT. So you can configure this however you want.